Hello beautiful people. Today I'm here to do my January wrap up. January's over already. I made one video in January, but I'm still trying to get back into this whole video making thing. But I had a good reading month in January. I read 10 books, which really is kicking off the year really well. I mean, 8 of them I listened to the audiobook for. I was making a reading vlog for the second to last week of January, and in that reading vlog I talked a lot about my struggle with physically reading books, and I also, Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction, tongue twister, she talked about in a video in January talking about how she has trouble physically reading books and like, you know, feeling like reading is productive and not like feeling like, oh, you should be doing something else and like not being able to focus on reading. And I'm going through the same thing. I have been for like since like 2017. And audiobooks have saved my butt for years. I listen to lots of audiobooks when I'm at work, so I also can't be alone with my own thoughts. The first book that I read in 2021 was Dark by Angie Sage. This is the 6th book in the Septimus Heap series. Now, the whole story behind this is I read most of the series when I was quite young. It was kind of what got me into reading, and I never finished it. And so I started rereading it in 2019, and then I stopped. So in 2020, I reread a couple of them, 1 or 2 of them, and then I'm continuing on. The 6th and 7th ones I never read. So this was not a reread. This was a altogether new thing. It's a middle grade series about wizards and witches, and it follows this boy Septimus Heap, who is the 7th son of the 7th son. So that seems to allude to great magical powers, and he gets stolen away from his family when he's born, and he gets replaced with someone else, and this whole thing happens. And in the first book he gets reunited and he finds out who he truly is, and it all goes on from there. And it follows him, it follows a lot of his family members, his friends. It's just a fun time, and I was happy to start the year off with middle grade. I needed something just light and fun, and this totally was that. And I think I gave this, I have my little cheat sheet, 4 stars. It was one of the better of the series. The next thing I read I don't own, I'll put up a picture. It was The Switch by Beth O'Leary. I really wanted to keep going. I was like, I really need something light. I don't remember what the heck was I reading in December that was so heavy. I have no idea. I just think it's a heavy time, and whenever you feel the need to read something lighter, friggin' do it. This was a romance type book that I've been wanting to read for a while because I really loved The Flatshare by Beth O'Leary, which is on my shelves back there, and I haven't picked up The Switch. It's called The Switch, right? I listened to it on audiobook, and it is about this young woman. I don't remember her name. Before the start of this novel, her younger sister dies of cancer. It's really broken up their family, and so at the beginning of this novel, she has a breakdown at work, and so her boss is like, hey, how about you take a few months? I feel like it's a few months of time off work, and just go and chill and just recover, and then come back when you're, you know, fully feel so much better and whatever. So she does. In the city, I think it's in London probably, she takes time off, she chills, she's like so bored out of her mind that she decides to swap houses with her grandmother, and her grandmother, they live out of London a few hours, like in a little what do they call it? Hamlet? In a little hamlet? Like a little town. And so they swap houses, and her grandmother goes to live in her flat in London with her roommates, and her grandmother has recently split up from her husband. It's basically like a house swap. Think like The Holiday, but instead of it being like 2 young women, it's not from America to the UK, it's a grandmother and a granddaughter. They swap place in London for a place in the country for a few months. And it's really fun. I don't know if I liked it quite as much as The Flatshare, but I gave it 3.75 stars. And the next thing I read was Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead by Olga Tokarczuk. I think her books have recently been getting translated from Polish, so they're kind of all over the place. There's a few of them that I see around. This one was a winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature. This book was so unexpected. I didn't really know much going into it. I just knew that I'd heard really good things, and it was like one of those kind of weird translated books that you don't really know much about, and I was seeing it all over, and I think it was a staff pick at my local indie bookstore. It follows, what's her name? Janina. She's this older lady that lives in a very remote Polish village. Like, so there's like a village, and then like quite a ways from there, like I don't know if it's like an hour or so, there's like a little kind of community of cabins, and it's mostly like a summer community. And so there's her and 2 other guys that live out there, and she basically is big into astrology, and she's a vegetarian, and she tends the, and I only say those 2 things because they're very big in her personality and in her character arc and in her motivations, this astrology and being vegetarian. And so she lives there. There's 2 other guys. So she just calls everyone by their nickname, what nickname she's made up in her head. So at the beginning of this novel, our character Bigfoot is found dead, and so Janina and Oddball are kind of trying to piece together what happened. This book took such an unexpected turn. Like, I had no idea. It's pitched kind of as a murder mystery, but it's not super hardcore murder mystery. It's kind of this meandering story that kind of, where Janina we go back and forth, we follow this and that, and then eventually there's like a big reveal at the end. So it's definitely kind of aimless for a while, and I don't know if that's just the writing style choice, but it was kind of like, I don't understand where it's going, but at the same time it was still very fun and interesting to read, and like I wasn't bored, I was just kind of confused. And then bam, we get hit with like a crazy twist. It wasn't that crazy, but it was like, I'm sure some people could see it coming, but I didn't. So I give this one 3.75 stars. Beartown by Frederick Bachman is the next one. I've been meaning to read this for quite a while, and it was great. Like, I've heard so many good things about it. I was like, oh, it's really hyped up, and it's this contemporary story about like a hockey community, and I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna feel about this one, but I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars. It follows, where is this? This is another translated book, and this one I believe is in Sweden. But Frederick Bachman is a very well-known author, and all of his books get translated. This one is about a little hockey town in Sweden, and that's pretty much the only thing. Like, they're very remote, and that's the only thing they really have going for them, is that they have hockey. And so there's a lot of like weird, like, hockey is everything to these people, and so if you get in their way, they're gonna trample you down. If you don't participate in any of the hockey stuff, no one really cares about you. A young girl is sexually assaulted by a member of the hockey team, and the whole, like, shit just breaks loose, because obviously the whole town, that's all they care about is hockey. This is the golden boy of the hockey team. It's just really well written, and like really fast paced and fun to read, like enjoyable to read. I won't say fun. Next is the other book that I don't own, which I do want to get a copy of this book, but I just haven't yet. And that is Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. This book is so good. It's basically following this Brewhex community in, I believe, Los Angeles, and our main character is Yadriel. He's trans, and in his family, the Brujos have the power to summon the dead, summon ghosts, and help them cross over. Spirits, not ghosts, spirits, and help them cross over. And then the Brujas, the ladies, they have the power to heal. And so Yadriel, he wants to be a Brujo, but his family, because he's trans, his family's not really accepting of him. They don't really believe that he can do it. They don't help him with the initiation ceremony. So he decides to do it himself, and he summons a spirit. He's trying to summon the spirit of his cousin who's just passed away, but he actually summons the spirit of this kid named Julian? I've heard it pronounced both Julian and Julian. And then we also have his cousin Maritza, which is like, she's like his sidekick, and she's just there to help him all the time, and she's great. He summons this kid Julian from his school, who he's going to help cross over. Yadriel and Julian kind of fall for each other, but then Yadriel believes that Julian has to cross over and he's gonna leave him, and it just rips your friggin' heart out. Oh my gosh. But this book is just so filled with like culture. There's a really, really good discussion about cultural appropriation that they highlight in this book, which I really appreciated. And it's just so friggin' good. And Aidan Thomas, I want to read whatever they write next, because this was wonderful. I gave it 5 stars if I didn't say. Next, I read No Exit by Taylor Adams. This is another wintry book that I have on my TBR that I'm trying to read this winter. This is a thriller. Darby is in college. It's Christmas Eve or whatever, and she's driving home because she just found out her mother has cancer, and she wasn't going to go home for Christmas, but now she is. So she's driving from Colorado to I want to say California or Washington or something, on the West Coast. And while she's driving, she gets stuck in this blizzard and has to pull off at this rest stop. And at the rest stop, there are 3 other individuals, and there's no cell service, and she's kind of like hanging around there waiting for this blizzard to pass, and she finds a little girl locked up in a dog cage in the back of this van. And so now she's trying to figure out whose van this is of the other 3 people at this rest stop. Actually, there's 4 people. And this is a really polarizing thriller. Some people really love this because it is really fast-paced and the twists are they'll just give you whiplash. There are so many. But it's also kind of weird. And like, Taylor Adams, that's a name, you know, it could be a guy or girl, but after so many farts, I was like, this has got to be a guy, right? So I flipped it. Yes, it is a guy. And he would be one to write a lot of like fart jokes and stuff. Not even jokes, but there was just a lot of farts in this book. Luckily that passes. That was just a phase at the beginning. Like, it was entertaining and fast-paced enough for me that it was just a fun ride. I wouldn't say it's my favorite thriller ever, but do I feel like it was a waste of my time? Absolutely not. It was just craziness and very odd, but like super readable. And I gave it 3.5 stars. This next book is The Poppy War. I was holding it up, so like it's not very surprising. The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I was so excited, yet like nervous to read this because I've heard nothing but good things, but I've also heard this series is like rip your heart out, like sad and intense. And wow, is it ever. I gave this 5 stars. I will say that right off the bat because just get over with. This follows a young orphan Rin. We're set in a fantasy country that's kind of Chinese inspired, I believe. And kind of this novel is kind of inspired by or takes a lot from the history and the second Sino-Japanese War, I believe, which I really know nothing about. So it's kind of a lot of what happens in this book and a lot of the plot is, I think, inspired by that. I really appreciate that because now I want to go and learn because what this author has done is just mind-blowing. So we follow a young war orphan named Rin, and she takes this, this exam that the whole country takes called the Keju. And is that what it's called? Yes. Empire-wide test to find the most talented youth. And after she studies so intensely for 2 years, all on her own, so that she can take this test when she's 16, she places first. She gets to travel north to Singard, and that is this elite military school. Yeah, it's split into 3 parts. So the first part is... There's like something crawling on me. I think it's my hair. First part is her getting into the school, getting there, blah, blah, blah. Second part, while she's at the school, she's there for, I think, 2 years, and then a war breaks out. And during her time at the school, once they get into their 2nd year, they can pledge to one of the, like, main subjects at school. So she pledges lore, which is kind of this subject that everyone laughs at and thinks is like a joke. And she pledges it because she has this kind of like power that she's finding out about. War breaks out while she's in her 2nd year at school, or just about finished her 2nd year. And she ends up kind of getting thrown into this whole war. And we really see, especially, I think it's around the beginning of part 3, end of part 2, we really see a shift in the tone of the story and a shift in our main character. Very, very traumatizing, gruesome, horrendous things happen, and it really changes the tone of the story, and it really changes our main character forever. This book had one of the darkest, most disturbing chapters I've ever read in anything, maybe the most. Please be careful, because I really appreciate the way that this author is highlighting these horrible things that happened in history, and kind of she is sharing them, but in a way through fiction, but it's really hard to read about. So, and I know that R.F. Kuang herself says that a lot of what happens in this book is inspired by true events. And it's absolutely horrific. If you can handle it, please read this book. It's so incredible. I've never read anything like it. And it's also, I appreciate so much that it's a fantasy that is like, really has a very modern kind of dialect. Like the characters, the way they talk is like how we talk. And and it's just so easy and fun to read. It is absolutely horrific, but it's also so magical and so incredible, and I've never read anything like it. And I can see the hype, okay? Last year, all anyone was reading was The Burning God, and I understand it now. After that book, I needed a break. I needed something light. So I picked up Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This, I listened to the audiobook. It's very like Fleetwood Mac inspired, set in like the 70s and 80s, and following this band. And all of the drama that goes along with it. And it's told in like interview format, so I think it's very readable physically, but I enjoyed the audiobook, especially it had like a full cast, and you know, there was a lot of like, I was listening to it on 2.0 speed, and it was kind of whiplashy the way it was like, this person, so maybe slow it down, I don't know, but like, because it's like one sentence and another sentence from a different person, and it's just like switching back and forth so much. But the audiobook was really fun, and so good. Like, this was so enjoyable. I gave it 4 stars. I think I've read everything Taylor Jenkins Reid has published now. She's just so good, and she's so good at what she's doing. She's in her own lane. It's just so she has books that like, they even have like hard-hitting elements, but they're still so like light and fun, and they just have this warm, glowy kind of atmosphere around them. They're so nice to read. She just has a certain like feeling to her books. This book I struggled to get through all month. I was listening to the audiobook. It's Disappearing Earth by Julia Phillips, the 4th wintry book from my January reading. It takes place on the Kamchatka Peninsula in northeastern Russia, and 2 sisters, 8 and 11 years old, go missing at the beginning of this novel. Just disappear off the face of the earth, and it follows like their mother trying to find them, and it follows all of this like drama and gossip that surrounds the community for the months after they go missing. But I just struggled to get through this book because it was so meandering. Like, you know, we had this kind of, got the story rolling in the beginning, and then we kind of we followed this character in a little snippet of their life. It was very like, there was like little slicey of life. I know, slices of life, and I know that like, it all was supposed to like, you know, be integral to the story and meld together. But it was just kind of, it felt just drawn out. Like, we follow this character and a little bit of what's going on with her, and oh my god, this woman, her crazy husband, like this person and their like high school boyfriend, and what's going on with it. Like, it was just, it was a lot of like back and forth. Those are not necessarily my favorite books, I guess. Books that like kind of follow all these different stories, but here and there. Like, some of them I do like, especially if they seem to have a rhyme or reason, like Homegoing, which follows so many different characters but totally has a pattern and makes sense. I love that book. This book was just kind of all over the place. It felt like, I think I just am underappreciating oaf. I don't know, like, it just wasn't totally for me. The writing was really beautiful, but I just was like, I didn't get the point, I guess. Like, it felt like we had the beginning with the kids going missing, and then the end when we find out what happened. And everything in between was just unnecessary. That's the way I felt. I don't know. I gave it 3 stars because I really did like the writing, but I just was kind of bored. Okay, the last book that I read in January was a reread. And I've decided that I'm going to reread all of the Percy Jackson books and the Heroes of Olympus books this year. So, because both of the... Actually, I decided this before the TV show thing was more so announced. I decided that I wanted to reread these because I want to catch up on the Trials of Apollo series, because I only read the first book like 4 or 5 years ago, and I feel totally lost. And I haven't reread any of Rick Riordan's books, and I read this like almost 11 years ago, and never again since, I think. We know, I mean, do you know what Percy Jackson's about? It's about this kid who is 11, and he finds out that he is a demigod, which is, you know, a son of a human and a god. And his godly parent is Poseidon, and he gets taken to this camp where he can be protected because the godly children, you know, all these monsters and things from the underworld are always trying to kill them. So they go to this camp where they're protected, and they get quests, and it's just so friggin' good. Oh my god, 5 stars. Like, it held up. I was really nervous because it's been 11 years since I read it, which is crazy to think about. Oh my goodness. But anyway, I feel like I might have reread it back when I was like 13 or something as well. I'm so excited to continue rereading. And now apparently there's going to be a TV show on Disney Plus, which let's really hope I think Rick Riordan is more involved this time, and I'm hopeful. I feel like, can they possibly totally botch an adaptation for this series twice? I started and ended my month with middle grade, and it was a good way to go. So that's everything that I read this month. Let me know in the comments, like, let's discuss some of these books. Have you read them? Do you love them? Did you hate them? Do you want to read some of these? I'm gonna go now because I feel like this video is already plenty long enough. And happy reading, everybody, and thanks for watching. I will see you next time. Bye-bye!